So I just finished watching DMS's video responding to Super Review's video responding to Linus Tech Tips video about the AirPods Pro 3, and I have some thoughts. I am going to be less measured in my response than Mark was, but some of the things that DMS said in that video genuinely upset me. I have discussed this at length with Listener, but I fundamentally disagree with the crusade that DMS and the Headphones.com crew have been on for the last several years to end the publication of raw measurements. For as long as I have been reading measurements and publishing measurements of my own, it has been widely understood that each reviewer's measurement database should be treated as only comparable to itself. And in a world of clone 711 couplers of unknown provenance and specs, I do not believe that compensation alone is the gateway to universally comparable measurements that it has been advertised as. I am open to compensating my raw measurements to JM1 instead of IEF comp, and I may reach out to Listener to see if that can be done, but raw measurements in and of themselves are not useless or flawed the way that DMS claims they are in his linked article. I and everyone else I have talked to about raw versus compensated measurements outside of the Headphones.com bubble believes that the perceptual difficulties that DMS and others have claimed are overblown and a non-issue in practice, no matter how many times they trot out that Cleveland and McGill figure. The issue with comparing Mark's AirPods Pro 3 measurement to the DK3001, which Mark did not do as far as I'm aware, are that one is comparing a measurement of a passive wired IEM to a TWS that is actively compensating for the wearer's ear anatomy and the fit of the earphone, which as DMS says is not necessarily a valid comparison. Bringing in the 5128 graph comparison to discredit the raw 711 graph comparison as DMS did in his video is disingenuous because 5128 is an inherently more accurate coupler regardless of whether the measurements are compensated or not. But this brings me to what really pissed me off about this video, which was DMS's offhand insinuation that 711 data is not useful or relevant in a world where 5128 data exists. Maybe that would be true if there were not an enormous cost barrier to 5128 measurement rigs, but that is obviously not the case. The proliferation of affordable 711 coupler rigs over the last decade has been the single most important and beneficial development to the in-ear audiophile market in its entire history. I have watched and heard the benefits to sound quality accrue in real time. The availability of these couplers to non-professional reviewers makes measurements and the salience of objective data itself more relevant to consumers than it otherwise would be, and trying to de-democratize measurements reeks of gatekeeping. If we return to a place where the only entities that can perform valid measurements are large manufacturers and professional review institutions that can afford the necessary hardware, then we are right back to where we were before Critical kicked the industry forward.